Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode 104 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. Today I have the pleasure of talking with Joni, Martin's mom. Martin has a very complex medical history that we'll go into a little bit, but he died just about 2.5 years ago now, shortly after his baby sister was born. In the time since Martin's death, they have started an amazing foundation called Nitty Strong. You can visit their webpage at Nitty Strong, NITTYSTRONG, nittystrong.org to learn more information about them. But they give out scholarships to kids and help with sporting equipment. They do all sorts of wonderful works in honor of Martin, whose nickname was Nitty. Martin's dream was to someday do sports broadcasting or sports journalism, so their focus tends to be on sports and academics. But overall, I just want you to hear about Joni's inspiring story and about how she has used this tragedy that she's gone through in order to really bring hope and healing with others. She is not afraid to get into the dark space with people and to walk with them in their tough journeys. So I know you will really enjoy Joni, Martin's mom. Thank you so much, Joni, for agreeing to come on the show today and talk about your amazing son.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to talk about Martin.
Yeah, Martin was a great kid, but he had an unbelievably complex medical history.
Yes. Yeah. From the moment I was pregnant with him, one of my first ultrasounds, we kind of knew there was something.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy because as I was reading the email that you sent to me, it was like you started out with one thing and then it moved on to something completely different and then completely different again. And then I just kept thinking to myself, wow, what? And now this. So just to tell the audience, Martin has a really complicated history, and we're going to try to probably have to abbreviate things a little bit because I feel like we could probably talk about Martin's medical history for a couple hours in and of itself. And then we don't get to talk at all about kind of you and your grief journey and things like that. So we're going to have to kind of plow through a little bit, but I also don't want to shortchange him because wow, what an amazing guy.
Yeah, he really was. And, like you said, it was always one thing on top of another, but that kind of just developed the character who he was.
Right.
I couldn't really imagine life any different, but.
Yeah. And he was an amazing kind of kid, and just his life's motto and things like that I found really just inspiring. So why don't you go ahead and just start talking about Martin and a little bit about who he was and his personality so the audience can get to know him a little bit.
Totally. So Martin was born in 2000. Like I said, when I was pregnant with him, they found on his first ultrasound that it looked like there were some issues with his bladder and kidneys. He was diagnosed early with posterior urethral valve, which just kind of meant there was an odd blockage in his urethra, which could lead to some level or severity of kidney damage. They weren't sure what that would look like.
And just as a little reminder, so the urethra is the little tube that comes from the bladder to go out of the body. And obviously there are normally not any valves there. that it's just a nice stream, so you can just urinate normally. But when there are these valves, then obviously that makes it much less likely to be able to go. And so the urine can really back up and your entire bladder can get dilated, and then it can back all the way up to the kidneys and give you kidney damage. So it's a severe thing to have. And in utero, before you're even born, actually infants urinate. So they urinate while they're in there. And that's what the amniotic fluid is actually those kids urinating. And then when you have that amniotic fluid, that's what babies breathe. So they breathe in and out the amniotic fluid. And so then if you have kidney problems, then sometimes then you're not getting enough amniotic fluid. So then now you have lung problems. And so there are like huge complications that start to mount. So you say a little thing like posterior urethral valves and you think, oh, okay, so that tube's a little messed up. It's not really a big deal, but it really blows up into a kind of a huge deal. So I just wanted to kind of preempt and just tell the audience that, because it's funny because now you know that,
right?
But most people don't know that. So
totally. And I was really young. I was 19, so I was very naive. I wasn't in the medical field yet myself. So like you said, I was just like, oh, no biggie. But yeah, it's amazing what it can lead to.
Mm-hmm.
All of that, I ended up having him early just because of those risks, like you mentioned, with the amniotic fluid being low. He was born at 33 weeks. Luckily, he actually just kind of excelled in regards to lung function and breathing. He was only intubated for a couple hours, but they did find out that his kidney damage was actually pretty significant, almost to the point where he had no kidney function.
Wow.
So he started peritoneal dialysis 5 days after he was born.
Mm-hmm.
He stayed in the neonatal intensive care unit for almost 2 months, on and off of dialysis, because as you probably know, it's easy to get infections, catheters get plugged up. And so there was always kind of one thing happening, but I finally got to take him home and we did dialysis at home. I did tube feedings, just, a bunch of stuff, and he did really well. The doctors were really surprised. They did tell me that just with all of what was going on is that, they gave me some statistics of he had about a 50% chance of making it to his first birthday. So when we did get to that first birthday, it was pretty amazing. I felt like we kind of could take a breath.
What a celebration. Yeah.
A breath. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the ultimate goal was going to be a kidney transplant. They said that would get him off of dialysis and hopefully get him to live a good life. So he did get his kidney transplant in 2002. He was a little over 1.5 years old. So he was a little guy, actually one of the youngest at the hospital that he received that at that time. And he did amazing. Martin always just, breezed right through anything, any procedure, condition. He was 2. We started to live life a little normal for a few years. And just a great kid. It's interesting when, babies have to go through so much when they're little, they just are so easygoing. He hardly ever cried. He took tons of medications every day. I even had to catheterize him because his bladder still wasn't functioning quite right. So, but just the best little boy.
Yeah. I think, you say that they do great. It's actually either one way or the other, because there are kids that I've taken care of that, like heart transplant kids, little kids that have had lots of stuff. And some of those kids just hate everybody too. So I'm glad he was the kind that was easygoing, because you said that and I was like picturing kids in my head who like kind of hate me and everyone that has a stethoscope around their neck. So it's not
True. They've just had too much.
You were blessed.
Right.
You were definitely
I guess I
blessed.
was.
And
I
I
will
feel
take
like,
that.
Yeah, little Martin, you could almost call him Miracle Martin, because he just kind of was little miracles just kind of kept happening for him, didn't
Yep.
they?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I chose Martin just because I liked it, but then I actually found out that Martin means warrior. So I was like, it was
that's perfect.
Very meant to be. Yeah.
Yes.
Kind of speeding up through this process again, Martin was an amazing kid. He loved school. He loved to find himself, just like succeeding in assignments, and grew to love sports. A little side note, because he was born early and he was ill, he had some kind of accompanying conditions. He had mild cerebral palsy, which caused him to not walk till he was 4 years old. And then he was also diagnosed to be on the autism spectrum, very high functioning. So he was mainstreamed, but everything Martin did, it just took him a little more work, but he loved to do it because he loved to see that success at the end. So he actually played unified sports, which is kind of part of Special Olympics. It's with kids with disabilities and without on the court together. So he was a rock star at basketball, wasn't the fastest on the court, but he had a good shot and played crazy defense. So it was fun to watch him do that. Junior high came along, and like you said, we kind of got hit with something else. Martin was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. So that was kind of just something new out of the blue, a body system we hadn't had to kind of fight and like manipulate yet. So
yeah, you had the kidney stuff down. You were like, that But now to all of a sudden your GI tract being screwed up too. Wow.
I know. So he started some new medications, and that seemed to help. He was able to feel better, eat, not feel so sick, go to school still. So, it was good. He started high school, things were moving along, just loving life. He grew a love for choir. So he was a singer, and I felt that connection.
That holds a soft spot in my heart, for sure.
Yes, I've listened to
Singing Boys. I love it.
I've listened to many of your posts of Andy's choirs. So I love it still to this day. So choir was wonderful. Sweet. His choir actually made it to a state competition in his junior year. He was so proud. So it was awesome.
Oh, wow.
And then we kind of kept rolling along. We were, things were just as stable as could be. And I look back and I'm just like, oh, I'm so glad we had those years, because God, they were great.
And it's great that you can say that, because, he's a transplant patient. So he's on all those transplant meds, and then he's on these Crohn's disease meds. Although there's probably some meds that kind of help both, ironically.
Yes.
Like being on steroids would be kind of good for both things. And there are some things for both, but wow, it's just a lot. It's just a lot to have to go through. And, when he's already been through quite a bit his whole life. But I love how he just had such a great attitude for life.
Oh, gosh,
right?
yeah.
I mean, he was kind of dealt a little, kind of a lousy hand in some ways, right? Medically.
Totally.
But yet he's in choir. He's doing school great. What a great attitude towards life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the thing that was always, because of his mild cerebral palsy, he kind of had a little limp and a little swag to his step. And, he would actually even have to take a hand of his friend to get up on the choir, the bleachers risers, thank you, that they sang on. And it's just, he didn't have, it's like he accepted that help, and he had no worry of what people would think of him. And I just always said he had so much more confidence than I could ever have. Right. I would have just probably not done anything. I wouldn't want anyone to see me, it's just, he just held his head high and just loved life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So high school, we were rocking and rolling. He was getting straight A's, taking AP classes, starting to think about college. He grew a love for football, which was kind of ironic always, because it's not like he ever saw himself on the field, but he loved the statistics part.
I was going to say he can't with his kidney. I don't know if people know this, because my foster son has a kidney transplant, but your kidney, when they give you a transplant, it's in your belly. Okay, so people in general think that they put it back to where kidneys go in the back, so they're protected. No, your kidney just sits in your belly. So you can't do things like play football and do crazy stuff like that, because your kidney is literally right there.
Yep, right underneath the skin,
right underneath the skin. My guy, he was so small when he got his transplant that you could actually see it. You could see the little bulge of the kidney for a while.
Yeah.
Well, because, you've got all your intestine and all that stuff in there. And now you try to stuff a whole extra kidney in there. I think for your little guy, getting it at 1.5, what a belly he must have had on him having that extra kidney in there.
I do remember. It was just plump and, yep. It's pretty cute.
Yeah, but like football is you cannot do
Yes.
football. No transplant surgeon would ever let you do football after you got a kidney.
Yeah. So he watched.
So he watched. So he loved it.
He loved the statistics, following the players. So he grew to fall in love the Denver Broncos. So he started following them, going to games, and he wanted to move to Denver. So his dream was to become a sports journalist or broadcaster. So
Okay.
Colorado is, full of sports. So we were going to move there after he graduated.
Where did you live?
We lived in Portland, Oregon at the time.
Wow. And so how did the love of the Broncos begin then from Portland, Oregon?
Good question. I think he actually kind of just fell in love with the mascot because he was really young when he fell in love with it. And then he just kind of grew into just really following them and just, loving it.
Oh, awesome.
How old would he have been? He would have been 15. We actually took him to Super Bowl 50 in California, the Broncos versus the Panthers.
Wow.
So we kind of always knew with Martin that with just everything he had, that maybe time was going to be a little limited.
Right.
It came to a point in our life that it's like, hey, if we could do something, like this might be it. Like this might be our chance. So,
especially when you get a kidney that young, you think, I mean, they certainly tell you this is not going to be the only kidney. The kidney is not going to live a full, long life. So, you were probably told to expect probably 2 or 3 kidneys if he were to live a long life. I mean, even with Valeriano getting his kidney at 17, we certainly don't expect this kidney to live as long as we hopefully want him to live, which means he will likely at some point need another. So I am sure they were thinking with Martin, it would be probably 3, right? So
we definitely knew there would be another one needed at some point. So.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm sure you did savor life a little bit more than that average kind of person would.
Yeah, we definitely did. So I'm happy with those decisions. At the time, financially, I was like, oh, can we really do this Super Bowl? But now I'm just like, oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah, it was 100% worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. But so come, summer of junior year to senior year, he's ready to start his last year, getting excited about those things that all kids do at that age. He started getting really sick, just really weak, nauseous. And, with so much that Martin was already dealing with, doctors were just kind of like, oh, maybe it's his Crohn's, maybe it's not being managed as well anymore. Maybe we need to try another medication. And, that totally made sense. We tried a few things that summer. He had to get some blood transfusions. And then he was able to make it to the first week of senior year. So he got to kind of have some fun with those activities. But that next week, he almost passed out in the bathroom getting ready that morning. So we went to the ER, and long story short, he stayed about 2 to 3 weeks. They worked him up for all kinds of things. They thought he had some type of, blood clots or this and that. And it was just like every day it was something different. In the end, he was diagnosed with lymphoma. So it was a shock, kind of made sense after thinking about it. And then, the sad thing was with all the medicines he'd been on his whole life with transplant meds and Crohn's, that's a risk.
Yep.
Looking back, I'm like, oh, if we didn't have to do that, if we didn't have to do this, but it's like, I guess all of those meds are what allowed him to enjoy those years of life. So I have to manage that in my mind a little bit.
It's hard, but that's what did it for sure. Yeah. And I can see why he would be hard to diagnose too, because so much of when you diagnose cancer, if you do some blood work, you see the inflammatory markers, and the inflammatory markers can be extremely high in cancers, but they also can be extremely high if you have a flare of your Crohn's disease. And so all of those same just kind of generic blood tests that they would do, you would not be able to really tell the difference until you probably did some imaging. I imagine that's how they really kind of discovered things, is with when they looked into things a little bit more and look and see.
And they just said he had some inflamed lymph nodes, and even at that time they said it could
Yep.
just possibly be Crohn's
Get the
again. So
Crohn's,
they
yeah.
actually, they said, we got to do the biopsy. We got to do
Right. You
the
have to do a
surgery
biopsy
to,
and see.
yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was, and he, again, just one more thing. And he took it with like, hey, I got this. And I did too.
How were you at that time? What were you thinking? I mean, I'm just going back and forth because I would think in some type, my part of my mind, I would think you're like, now cancer? And you'd be totally devastated. And then on the other time, it's like, yeah, but he got everything else. I mean, he got the
Exactly.
transplant. He's fine. Crohn's disease that can kill kids. And he
Yeah.
making it through that, doing really well. So then you kind of go, okay, cancer? Maybe we got this too. So
Totally.
where was your head at that point in time?
I would, just like you said, I was like, yeah, this is no big deal. Like we've done this before. It's a little,
Yeah.
like a little bump in the road. Like we didn't really plan this for senior year, but hey, like not a big deal.
Right. Because he's done everything else because he's Miracle Martin.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And he did too. He was excited. He started his first round of chemo on his 18th birthday in the hospital.
Oh my.
It was just like, his doctors loved him and they sang happy birthday and we had cupcakes up there. And it was great. It's now that I think back, it's just like really good memories. I think even through, cancer treatment. So,
yeah.
Then side note, I was about 8 weeks pregnant at this time, Marcy,
Yeah. Yes.
with my daughter. We had tried for many years to add a sibling for Martin, and we had many losses. We even had a baby who had trisomy 18.
Yeah, I saw that. Mm-hmm.
Martin got to actually meet that baby.
But how scary to be going through this pregnancy and to be doing these treatments and all of this stuff kind of going on at the same time. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I really thought that because of the losses, I was like, this stress now. And like, I kind of anticipated probably not being able to keep this pregnancy as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of knew that was a chance for sure.
Yeah. And you probably didn't want to get your hopes up.
Exactly. Yeah. I was just one day at a time. And Martin, even back then, he was strong, but sometimes he would be so realistic and he'd be like, he said, I just want to meet her. And I was like, of course you are. Like, stop. Like, we got this. You'll be fine. So he went through chemo. He did 4 rounds. He was doing online classes, keeping up with his senior year because he wanted to graduate. He had even started a college course in like a journalism class that he was doing, which I loved because it just kept him, having that hope that we're going to see the end. They rescanned him, did some tests, and there was really no change. It wasn't necessarily worse or better, but they really just didn't like that it wasn't better.
Yeah.
Being that Martin was 18, we actually they thought that maybe we should like treat him more like as an adult. So he started going that round and kind of was seen by a whole new team. And so we started a second line of treatment with plans for like a stem cell transplant. And it was just, after the first treatment, I think it was January of like 2019, he just really had significant changes, some confusion, disorientation, just wasn't Martin. So it kind of really scared us like quick. We ended up back in the hospital numerous times. And so we're there. He actually ends up starting to have what they think is a possible GI bleed or blockage. So he gets taken to ICU. He's having to have multiple transfusions. Things are just kind of like, getting out of hand. And I think the scariest part is that we weren't even really talking cancer treatment anymore. We were kind of just talking like, how can we maintain what is going on?
Right.
Just simple facts. And all of this was happening while I was set to give birth in March. And so we were actually in the same hospital. My husband joked that he'd be bouncing back and forth from floors, but that literally ended up being the truth. Yeah. Martin was in the ICU. I was being induced, and which wasn't successful, as I'm thinking about, my son who is hanging on. So my body was like, no. So I had a C-section with Marley. And Martin was supposed to be there. He was supposed to be in the room with us, with Marley, because he always said that he wanted to be by my side as I was for him, for all of his surgeries and procedures. And so the hospital was amazing. I'm a nurse myself, so I can't even begin to thank the staff and the nurses of what they did in allowing, they wheeled me on a bed up to the ICU to see him. And we were by each other's sides for a while. And then right after we had Marley, that was the first place we went, is he got to meet her first.
Oh, so sweet.
At that point, I just I was so proud to be a nurse, because it's those moments that I hope they always know that that's the kind of care, those are the things that people remember forever. So
Yeah,
yeah.
they are.
Yeah.
And then for him to get to see her and hold her, I imagine.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was very overwhelmed. I think, he was worried, concerned, a little confused, but just overwhelmed with her, and just loved her so much. We got out of the hospital, Marley did, but we basically went to just go stay with him. And then things went downhill really fast. He actually had to be transferred to another hospital. He was having kind of a massive bleed, needing a massive transfusion. And he needed, a procedure. Some of his arteries were kind of being compressed, and due to the tumors and lymph nodes.
Tumors, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so he got the procedure, and then, we were just kind of told, though, that this just wasn't going to be kind of sustainable.
Yeah.
I was a mess, just having given birth, all of those hormones on top of just kind of being led down the road of being almost told that this might be the end was
and
was
you have
pretty
this
hard.
brand new little baby, but then you're saying goodbye to your other. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we went in a meeting, and Martin came with us, and he was so strong. And I remember it to this day, because it's something that will on a times kind of haunt me, but he was always so wanting me to feel reassured with what was going on. And so he was, they were talking about hospice, and he was nodding his head.
Yeah.
Just wanting me to know that it was going to be okay.
Yeah. So amazing what kids do. They just want to protect their parents so much.
Always.
And I'm sure he was more worried about you than he was even about himself. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. That was kind of our whole life. Like I said, I was really young, so I feel like in some ways Martin and I grew up together.
Right.
We just were always there for each other. So we went with hospice, but I felt like, when you have no control in a lot of things, you all of a sudden you want some control over something. So I was like, we are going to go to Denver. We're going to go to Colorado. That's where we're going to hospice. And I said, you wanted to move there? We're doing it. And the hospital was great.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
They got everything set up, and Marley was 2 weeks old, and we were on a plane going to, Denver, and we got so much support from family and friends and people who didn't even know us, gave us air miles and set us up he got to be down on the floor of a Denver Nuggets basketball game with the broadcasters doing, what he wanted to do when he grew up.
Yeah.
And so he got these moments, and granted, they were in a short time of almost a couple weeks, but I got to kind of see his full life kind of compacted. He even got to meet some celebrities on the Broncos team.
Oh, wow.
It was amazing. Even some of our friends in Denver threw a tailgate on a random Sunday in March and in a parking lot I heard we weren't supposed to be. So we lived life, and Marley was there by our side the whole time. It was the four of us as the plan was.
As it should be. Yep.
Yeah.
As it was supposed to be. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he was doing good and stable, and I will tell you, I never gave up hope and faith through the way of thinking, doctors can tell me this and that, but at the end of the day, they could be wrong.
Yep.
He had some good days, and I was like, oh, maybe. And then and he started getting kind of ill. We actually went into an inpatient hospice facility to kind of get him some hydration. He was pretty dehydrated. And so, with pediatrics, hospice isn't always necessarily like, take everything away. So that was nice. They were even willing to do blood transfusions if he needed them. It was a great facility. But then, a couple days there, I was pulled aside by a nurse and kind of told that, hey, this is probably going to be his last day. And I was in shock and I was thinking like, I'm a nurse myself and like, what are you saying? I don't see this. But then she said, you're his mom. You're not supposed to see that.
Yeah. And you don't want to see it.
Yeah, yeah. But I knew at that time though, I was so thankful for her to just be so honest. And I was just like, wow, like, how can you do this every day? And work, tell people these things. And I was just like, okay, like, but then I told her, hey, we gotta leave. Like, I gotta get him back to the Airbnb in downtown Denver because that's where he wanted to be. I always kind of promised him I never wanted him to die in any type of a hospital, medical setting. I wanted him
Yeah.
home. And so they got it arranged and we rode an ambulance through Denver. Marley was in the ambulance with us, all buckled in her car seat. And because they told us that it's possible he could pass en route. And I said, I
Yeah.
just want us all four together. And but we got back to the Airbnb. It was the Colorado Rockies home opener. We actually were right in downtown, so we heard the jets fly over. And we laid in bed, all of us, and just reminisced about life and looked at pictures and listened to music. And I always say it was like perfect. And it's just so odd how you can say that.
Yeah.
But I couldn't imagine it any other way. And I'm
Yeah.
just so blessed and thankful that like I feel like we got everything we wanted, other than the obvious.
Right. The obvious would have been a cure, right? Yep.
Exactly. And so yeah, that that was it. But I just feel like it's just like, it was great. We were together.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm
yeah.
glad you were blessed to be together like that. That is
Yeah.
nice to know that you had that in those final moments, and the fact that he got to meet Marley is so big. How
Yeah.
long were you in Colorado before he died?
Not even 2 weeks. I think almost
Okay.
2 weeks. Yeah.
Well, you got a lot in those 2 weeks then, didn't you?
We did. Every day was packed. I'm sure we exhausted him, but he was always willing and up for anything. So,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
yeah.
So talk about now that time after and what that was like, and just to share that with your new baby and everything.
It was interesting because it was just I couldn't, crawl in bed or, just be by myself. I had a baby to take care of. We grieved together, we cried, we enjoyed times with her. So we had like smiles through tears. It was just interesting. And the whole time I kind of always think Martin was so spiritual that I swear it was like set up that we were going to be left with Marley because I think he knew me all too well that I I love being a mom and I
Yeah.
can't imagine not mothering someone here physically. So
Right.
I was happy to have her to see her smiles and you know just have a purpose through all of it still.
Yeah. Yeah. That is really a powerful thing to be able to still have. So,
Yeah.
one thing that you wrote to me, and I can't remember what it was exactly, but it was a piece of advice that Martin wanted given to Marley. So, can you share
Yeah.
what that was again? Because I thought, I love that.
Yeah, we actually recorded it even, and he was always so up for it. So we asked him what he wanted her to know, and it was to live in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the motto of our foundation, the Nitty Strawn Foundation. So Nitty was his nickname. Little side note is that Martin backwards is Knit Ram, like spelled backwards. And so then we called him
Okay.
Nitty. And that's been his nickname for years. So when he was going through his cancer fight, we created the little bands and did that. And it was a Nitty Strong. So
Nitty strong. Okay.
we created the Nitty Strong Foundation. And our kind of motto is live in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
that's we say that all the time, and we remind ourselves that even sometimes to this day when Marley does something fun and I'm like, oh shoot, I don't have my camera, or like I wish I had this, and I was like, live in the moment. Maybe it's not meant to be captured, but just like remembered in our minds and heart.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Because how old is Marley now?
Marley is almost 2.5.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she's a big girl.
She's a big girl. She's a busy girl.
And do you talk to her about her brother, her big brother?
We do. We do. We have pictures up of him. We were fortunate to get family pictures when he left the hospital on hospice. I had actually already scheduled newborn pictures and I canceled them. And our photographer wrote me and she said, can I come over and just take some like pictures of your family? Because she knew what was happening. And I was like, it sounded horrible at the time, but I was like, yeah, sure. And now I'm like so thankful I have them. So we have family pictures of the four of us up, and she knows his name. She'll see pictures and say Martin or Nitty. And yeah, because I guess that's always my biggest fear is like will she know him? And my family says, of course she will, because they talk about him and they're gonna talk to her about him. And she helps us with foundation stuff and she goes to events. And I can't wait for her to become a bigger part of that as well.
Why don't you talk more about the foundation now and what it does and the kinds of things you've done?
We created it right away.
Right away after he died, or even when he had cancer?
Actually, they created a Nitty Strawn Facebook and website page while he was in the hospital, kind of at the end. And then the foundation was created after. And I think my husband kind of told him we were going to do that. So Martin actually did receive his diploma early and even got to wear his cap. He got to wear his cap and gown before we left for Denver. We had kind of a goodbye party for us all as we were all moving. And, hundreds of people came and he got his diploma, received it from his choir teacher. But of course, he didn't get to walk. So back in June, we went back for graduation. The high school let me walk in his honor and when his name got called. And it was actually the same high school I graduated from exactly 20 years earlier. So,
wow.
Yeah, kind of just bittersweet and sad and happy and odd. So,
yeah.
But we actually gave our first scholarship out that year. So it would have been to one of his classmates. And it was the majority of the money was actually money Martin had made at his summer job that summer. He worked at a local kind of AAA type baseball team ballpark. So, so that was really good
because he was getting ready for that because that's what he wanted to do with his life, huh?
Yeah, yes, totally. Yep, he was great there. So it was great to give a scholarship to a classmate of his. And then, so we planned, so since then we've given out 4 scholarships to graduating seniors. Another passion of the foundation is to give sports grants and monies to youth sports teams as he loves sports. So just, extra things, equipment, special uniforms, just those things that cost money for these teams out there playing, and
the things that they normally wouldn't be able to maybe get, right? Because
exactly.
You've got these yearly fees that you don't want to make them one year like exorbitantly high just because they need a certain type of equipment. So it's nice to be able to gift them that.
Yeah.
So they can get some new things.
And then we also kind of do these like what we call kind of random acts of kindness, just things in the community. Like we just did a backpack giveaway. So backpacks full of school supplies to, local kids. So it's just fun. It's just things that I know that like, I'm sure he's smiling about as we are doing them. It just makes you feel good that like, every day you kind of wake up and he's giving you something to still be passionate about.
And to live in the moment, right?
And to live in the moment, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what a great thing. I just feel like he's just got such an inspiring story that everyone should hear about. So it's nice for you to be able to have this foundation and kind of, I think, just promote that a little bit too, right? So other people can get to know him a little bit.
Totally. Exactly. Yeah. We love to talk about him. Yeah. Kind of, heals our heart a little bit at a time.
You ended up moving to Colorado then permanently?
We did. We stayed there for about 2 years. We're in New Mexico now. COVID kind of, knocked us down a little bit. But we stayed in Colorado for 2 years, and I actually went back to work for a little while, and I actually went to go work at the hospice facility he was taking care of because I was so passionate about what those nurses did for him. And so my heart will always lie in hospice nursing from here on out. So
Really? So that's what you feel called to do now?
yeah,
You
yeah.
Wow. How hard was that at the beginning? Was that hard or didn't feel hard?
It was kind of hard, but everything I think my husband and I even say this together, is like things that feel hard or situations that are hard or sad. I feel like it's nothing in comparison to like things that he had to go through in life,
Yeah.
whether it was like through, medical stuff or procedures, or I just always walk into everything just kind of saying, I got this, because
Yeah.
and again, it's nothing in comparison to losing him. So
Right.
if I feel a little uncomfortable or sad or, just scared, it's just, I feel like I've been through the worst in life.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
can't guarantee, but I'm hoping, on, an uphill climb from here. So,
I thinking after I asked that question about, because it was very hard for me to go back to work after
hmm
Andy died, and it took
yes.
close to a year really for me to stay back permanently. But then thinking about it, the hard part was not seeing the really sick kids. That's not the hard part. The hard part
hmm
was the everyday stuff and somehow the stuff that no longer seemed that important. Even like
Totally.
I I did administrative work when Andy died, and I did it for a while right after because it was easier than seeing patients. But then after a while, it just didn't feel important.
hmm
And then I couldn't do it because it just didn't mean enough, and I felt like I needed to be somewhere that was deeper and more real. And I mean, even like the podcast, right? What do? I talk to bereaved parents. Like, that's not what normal people like to do.
Right. It's not what people like to
Normal
talk
people do
about.
not like to talk to people whose kids have died. Let's just put it out there. That's
Yeah.
a real
That's
thing. That's not. So then I'm like, I guess that's not so strange that that's what you would be called to do, because not dissimilar to what I feel like I'm called to do is standing beside and walking beside bereaved parents. And so you're
totally.
walking beside dying people and their families, and helping them through the hardest time they're ever going to have to go through.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always feel like it's, through many years of Martin's medical stuff, nurses and doctors and their caring, and some would say, I understand or I know. And sometimes I would like to say, like, do you really? And,
Yeah.
maybe they do. And, they've seen it, so they do understand in a way, but they're not a parent of it, most likely. So I feel like, I love to share. I didn't always share because I wanted to care for their person at the bedside who was dying. But
Right.
sometimes it felt right to share like, hey, I actually have been where you are. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that. And they appreciated it so much. And I would have never thought I would have loved it.
I was going to say, I know they do. They do. And
Yeah.
I've talked to different people, and sometimes people are like, yeah, I don't want to put my own on them because
Yeah.
I don't want to put it on them. And I
Right.
completely understand that. But they usually don't take it like that. They kind of take it like, what? You've done this and you're still getting up every day. How
Exactly.
are you getting up every day? So they're more curious to ask you how you do it. You're not actually bringing them down by
hmm
sharing your story. Most of the time, you are making them realize, wow, she's getting up every day and she's like coming to work and she's doing all of this stuff. That means maybe I will be able to do that too. So actually, I think it gives them hope. So I feel like it's better to share some of those things. I mean, like, not share to the
Yep.
point where you're just sobbing all over them, but
Right.
to the point if you can be somewhat of an inspiration of, yep, it is really hard and it is really terrible, but here I am 2 years later still getting up every day and
hmm
still doing this every day, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think about something my pastor told me in the early days that I didn't understand. And he would say to me, it's a privilege to walk beside you through this. He would use the word privilege. And I use that same word now.
Yeah.
When I talk to families about sharing their story, I say, I would be honored to share your story. I am privileged to walk beside you. I recently had a friend who lost her son, and I said that I used the same term. I said, I am privileged to walk beside you through this, because that is truly what it feels like. It feels like an honor now to be with someone in their darkest and help them. And it's not bringing anybody down or anything. It's a sacred space to be there. And when you're with a family who's going through that, when you're in hospice, that is sacred.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Definitely.
Wow. I just love that. So, but now you're in New Mexico.
We are enjoying the sunshine and heat.
Well, I don't know about enjoying the heat. I'm in Michigan, right? We don't love heat. We get a little nervous. If it gets up to 90 in Michigan, we're like, whoa, you gotta cool off here a little bit. I don't think we can handle New Mexico heat. So, yeah. So what are you doing now? Are you doing some of the same type of thing? Or are you taking a little bit of a break, or?
I am just doing kind of as needed work, actually, in like a behavioral health hospital. Okay. I have realized that I can't ever return to nursing in, a medical type hospital. I get a little, things start coming back, sounds, noises. So I just feel like I'm not going to be the best nurse for the patients, nor, it's just not a good combination. So I'm like, I'm going to try something that maybe it hasn't really, I've never had to deal with. So, I'll have that compassion and I'll have everything that kind of drives you towards nursing. Yeah, I'm just doing a little work in there right now, spending a lot of time with Marley. And we kind of moved to New Mexico to kind of, step back from having to work so hard. And my husband calls it like an early retirement, because we really want to focus a lot on the foundation. So
Right. That's what I was going to ask too, if that was kind of taking up a little more of your time as well, if you're doing a little more with that. Are you trying to do that locally, or is that in Colorado? Is it in Oregon? Where are you?
We always post it kind of wherever, especially when it comes to scholarships. It gets posted on our Facebook site. Kind of willing to kind of roll with. We got some kind of random applicants for scholarships this past year. So it's kind of fun to see how far we can reach other than Eddie Strong Foundation.
Do you have certain requirements for your scholarships? Are they for certain types of people, or what have they been?
We had some tight requirements the first year. We wanted, someone who wanted to go into journalism, things that Martin probably would have said, but we kind of like eased those up a little bit, just a little bit of a GPA requirement, I think 3.0 or above, and really just whatever you want to study, where it's pretty open now. So,
and any schools and things like that too?
Schools, trade schools, even, I think there's some questions that we just ask, and we just love to get people's personal stories and kind of read, what these kids have gone through in their young, years so far. And it's amazing, some of the stories we get, and where it's just like, again, it'll kind of knock the breath out of me even after what, I've been through, and just be like, wow, like I can't imagine that. So, life is kind of interesting, because sometimes you can think.
That's hard for me to believe, because goodness, I read your story and it knocked the breath out of me for sure. So I don't know what you're reading to knock the breath out of you.
Yeah.
Of course, I've said with Gwen just recently, I was talking about how I think you just you're just never impressed with your own story. You just feel like, well, that's just my life. That's just what it was. And then you get impressed with other people's stories. Like we got on here and you said, I feel like I'm sort of talking to a celebrity. And I'm like, well, whatever. It's not. I mean, it's just me. It's a little girl from small town Iowa. It's not.
But think of all the people like you've reached. I was so thankful when I found your podcast. I was doing kind of home hospice at the time, so I was driving a lot at night. and I would have your podcast on, and I would just be like smiling and nodding and just feeling like I wasn't alone or crazy. So I loved it.
I know. It is really nice to not feel so alone because it is a
Hmm.
very isolating feeling.
Yes.
Hmm. Hmm. So, what kinds of advice do you feel like you might want to share with our listeners today?
Kind of just cherishing the memories you had.
Hmm.
I can say I always knew I probably wouldn't see Martin at 80, but I definitely wasn't ready for just 18 years. But I just look at those 18 years, and I even, from the stories I've heard on your podcast, I just feel like our kids' lives were so fulfilling, and it's just
Yeah.
interesting. So I feel like it's like sometimes we need to not focus on what we missed or what we
Yes.
anticipated missing, but like what we got, and like what a beautiful like moment in time we had
Hmm.
with
Hmm.
them.
Yeah, that's a great point because it is easy to think about all the time that you missed and the things
Mhm.
that you didn't have, that you won't see him go to college and didn't see him graduate and won't see the grandchildren, all those things. It's easy to concentrate on the things you don't have. It's sometimes harder to go back and say, oh, but look at this. Look at this memory. Let's think of this time. Think of those sweet moments and just cherish them and hold them and feel blessed that you had them. I mean,
Mhm.
it's like I think about you with how happy you were with those couple little weeks that you guys had as a family of four. And for you to think about that in that sense instead of the sense of all Martin has missed out on little Marley, the just the
Mhm.
blessing that they had some of that time together.
Yeah,
You really are
exactly.
an inspiration, honey. I know you might not feel like it, but it is powerful. You and Martin both have a powerful story, and I love too how you have really, we talked about purpose, finding purpose and meaning making and post traumatic growth. And you're just a shining example of that in what you've been able to do and kind of help other people and be there when they're in their dark times. And I know in your behavioral health practice with nursing, you're going to be able to do the same thing for them too. So bless you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for sharing Martin and sharing all of that. I can't wait to have you send me some pictures. We've got to see some pictures
Yes.
of him with maybe that Super Bowl picture. I bet there's something fun there.
Oh, most
So all of
definitely.
you
Yep.
make sure you go to the website at andysmom.com or sign up for the email list, because if you sign up for the email list, then you get the pictures emailed to you every week along with a little writing and the link to the episode so you can see all of that there. So thank you so much, Joni.
Thank you, Marcy. This was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
It was a
You
pleasure talking
bet.
with you.
Thanks for listening to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. We are always looking for new show ideas. If you'd like to be a guest, know someone who'd be a great guest, or have a show idea, please email us at marcy@andysmom.com. Be sure to visit the webpage, andysmom.com, for more content, including Marcy's blog. There you can also sign up to receive updates via email. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.